Eric Lopez. Eric Lopez is a distinguished former U.S. Army veteran and leadership expert. Eric Lopez founded the company Arrowhead Leadership Consulting and is currently the CEO of that company. I had the pleasure of learning about Eric Lopez through a podcast, No Nonsense Agile, I think it was called, and I subsequently found out about Eric's YouTube channel, which was very, very insightful in terms of the U.S. Army take on leadership. And as a matter of fact, Eric has picked a topic on Mission Command 2.0. So this is really quite interesting in terms of the future of mission commands. So Eric, over to you.
All right. Well, it's an honor to be here today and excited to spend a little bit of time with everybody. I'm gonna try to get you guys talking and do a little bit more interactive and see if we can do that. If it doesn't work, then I'll just drone on in a typical retired Army colonel fashion, and we'll go from there. So the as Will's bringing up the slides, I would put this out to the group. When you think Army leadership, military leadership, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in America, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Hierarchy.
Hierarchy. Good. What else?
Rules and regulations.
Rules and regulations. You must follow and comply. What else?
Discipline.
Discipline. High discipline. Yeah.
I was going to say, Eric, orders coming from the top and pushing down.
The colonel tells the major tells the captain tells the sergeant tells the private from top to bottom. When I came into the Army in the late 1990s, the style of leadership, the leadership philosophy of the U.S. Army was called command and control. And it was everything you guys just said. It was hierarchy. It was top-down orders. It was, discipline and follow the rules, follow the regulations. And you even look at the picture. I took this picture out of our manual that when I came in the Army, this is what it looked like. Straight lines, no movement, and it's just very clear and clean, right? And that's because for us, we had a known enemy, known location, and known allies we were going to fight with. Our enemy was the Soviet Union. We knew we would fight in the Central Plains of Europe, and our allies would be NATO. And very defined information from the top and push down. Well, if you go to the next slide, Will, what happened was we found ourselves in the middle of two wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the battlefield looked a lot more complex. Okay, it looked like that. And what we realized is we were drastically unprepared for this type of conflict. No clear front line. I can't really tell who my enemy is. It's an unknown enemy. It's an unknown location that could change. And the other thing was that every village was different. Different villages had different tribes, had different problems. And so unknown enemy, unknown location, and unknown allies. We didn't really know who we were working with. So we were trying to use an antiquated style and philosophy of leadership, and it was not going well. And what the Army did was shift its leadership philosophy to something called mission command. So if you go to the next slide, Will, it really shows sort of the contrast between command and control and mission command. So on the left side, you have command and control, direct oversight. I issue an order and I ensure that order is followed. On the right side, you have mission command, which says I give clear intent and guidance, and I empower my subordinates to make their own decisions and take their own initiative. And that was the shift and the change that we went through. And And the way you decide on where to be on that spectrum is based on two factors: trust and risk. Okay. So in good Army methodology, we overcorrect towards the mission command side, right? So then we had privates that were saying, "Hey, you can't tell me what to do. That's not mission command," right? No, that's not what we're saying. So mission command really is a balance of those two aspects, right? Some people you're going to have direct oversight on them. You're going to give them a task. You're going to make sure that task's complete. They may be a new person, right? Do I trust this person yet? Do I know this person's background, strengths, weaknesses? No. So I'm going to start on the command and control side, right? Some people that I've worked with, I trust them, I know them, no matter the situation, I know I can just give them that clear guidance and empower them to figure out the solution on their own. Because the difference between the two is that mission command philosophy is so much faster. You can operate and make decisions so much faster. Because instead of each of the platoon leaders calling the company commander for permission, they're empowered to make decisions inside the commander's intent. So that commander or that boss or that director or that business unit leader gives clear guidance, gives clear intent, and their subordinates can make decisions quickly underneath them. Going back to what Gavin said, right? He talked about managing complex domains. So the first slide, right, the black and white slide, not complex, very structured and very straight. The second slide with all the arrows and things going a million different directions, that's the world we live in, right? Complex domain. And Gavin talked about no silos, no dogma, no dumb work. I love that one, right? I used to have a rule where I would say, if it's dumb, it's not my policy. I don't have dumb policies. If you're doing something dumb, stop, right? To Gavin's point. So, you can see on the civilian side and on the Army side, we're going through that change from that command and control to that mission command. Now, the problem is you can't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You still have to have times where you're going to have that direct control, direct oversight, but it's going to be on a spectrum. It's the combination of the two that you're going to get the best results. Another example would be when risk goes up, I'm going to go a little bit more on the control side of the spectrum. I used to say, if it's nighttime, it's raining, and there's a high enemy threat, I'm going to be a little bit closer to the problem. If it's the middle of summer, it's the middle of day, and there's very low enemy threat, I'm going to use that opportunity to empower and to build trust and to use that as a leadership growth experience, right? So mission command and the way we should lead is on this spectrum of between direct oversight and employee empowerment. Now, most of us want to do all one or all the other, right? If we do all direct oversight, we're called a micromanager. If we are kind of just a freewheeling, let everything go, I'm on the other side, right? We want to be that combination of the two and move on the spectrum. But we want to build a culture. Gavin talked about the culture at the end of his talk. We want to build a culture that's always going to the right, where we're going towards that employee empowerment model. As we onboard people, we train them, we grow our trust, we're building them to the right, so we're operating in the green. Now, I want to throw a little monkey wrench in the idea here, right? So that's my normal mission command pitch that I give, and now we're going to start to think through what's the next evolution of mission command. So I would ask you this: what are the cliches and the stereotypes of the young generation that's coming into the workforce today? What are you guys seeing in your businesses? I know you all have them, so just let the complaints fly.
Yeah, I think work-life balance is one, right? It's very strongly driven. Sorry, Joanna, coming across you all day.
No, you're fine.
Work-life balance in what sense?
That basically, I suppose they understand the commitment to the company, but they also think that there's this other life they want to enjoy. So it's kind of like getting those. In the past, Eric, we used to work and work and work, and it was all about the company. You just work for the company. That isn't the way it is now. Okay, so I suppose that's what I'm talking about, that context.
So when it comes to the work-life balance, they like to balance the life, not
the life. Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, somebody else.
Yeah, a lot of people in the younger generation, they prefer to message you on like technology rather than speaking to you face to face. And I've noticed none of them have any phones on their desks. So like we work in a factory kind of type of area, and it's like you need to hustle and ring people, and they won't do that, it seems to me. Yeah.
Definitely tech dependent. What else?
I would say when it comes to talent retention, having a good plan in place where kind of probably in that work-life balance, certain people seem to think, oh, I've done 6 months, I've got a year experience, I'm due a promotion or I'm due a salary bump, and if I don't get it here, I can jump to another company and get it because I've got that experience, as opposed to having, incentives in place based on performance. So not necessarily performance related, but time related can be a thing.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's flip it. Let's have a little. We're going to kind of end our talk today on talking about emotional intelligence. What's the stereotypes of our generation, whether we're that millennial kind of generation or that my generation, that 40s and 50s, that kind of Generation X? What are some of our stereotypes?
Yeah, Eric, I think that commitment to thinking that we're going to get into a company, for example, or a position and stay there almost for our whole career, I think that kind of settles, back in the day, whereas nowadays it's seen as a career is more about moving around.
Right. Yeah. Extremely loyal. You want to just climb the ladder in that one company and that's it.
I think the idea of being resistant to change, that maybe the newer generation think they've got a better way of doing it, and if you don't immediately jump on it, then they're gonna think, well, he's just kind of set in his ways, and that's probably always been a thing.
Okay. Yep.
Assumption. Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Assumption that knowledge comes with seniority. So seniors make decisions, everybody follows.
Yep. Okay.
Thinking higher or younger people can't do higher level jobs. Like, I had my own company and I was saying something at a talk and someone said, oh, she's too young to have her own company. And like, that's really poor kind of, anyone could do whatever. It just depends on how they go about it.
Yeah. Good. All right. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Will. So one thing we've seen here, and maybe some of this is an American phenomenon, but we really see very distinct differences between the generations in the workforce today. So and it's based on what we call Arrowhead, the parenting pendulum. So how your generation is determined by your parents. So we'll start with Generation X, right? So first of all, Generation X parents was the boomer generation. And the big phenomenon with the boomer generation, it was the first generation where both parents went to work, or a high, the rate of divorce went up. So you had a lot of single parent families out there. So Generation X, which is kind of the 40s and people in their 40s and 50s, both parents were working and we became very independent, right? So for me, I walked home from school. I took my key out of my pocket. I opened the door. I went in. I got my own snack. I got on my bike and I went and ran around the neighborhood. and I never saw my parents. And the rule in the States, did you on when you had to come home? What's your guys' rule on what's the rule on when you got to be home? Did you guys have that as kids?
Or dark.
Okay. When the street lights come on, you better be home. Other than that, my parents had no idea where I was. I was riding around the neighborhood. So Generation X is known as being very independent, very free thinking, very entrepreneurial, right? Look at our music, right? We had the Beastie Boys, we had Nirvana, MTV comes up for Generation X. And so that generation, that's us. Now, the irony is that all the Gen Xers who were extremely underparented overparent their millennial kids. And they build this like adult-like schedule where, we take the kid to ballet, then they go to karate, then they go to trumpet lessons, then they go to church, then they, and there was no second when the Gen X parents weren't with their millennial kids. So what's happened with the result of that with our millennials, kind of 23 to, mid to 39, right? To coming up on 40 now. They're very confident. They're very optimistic. They're very goal and achievement oriented because they've always felt like, man, I can do anything, right? Because their parents, we call them helicopter parents, helicoptering them and making sure they're always safe. The thing that changed with the millennials from Gen Z or from Gen X is that the millennials want to know why. You have to tell them why. You can't just say, hey, go and do this. And they also want to be very collaborative in everything they do. Okay. So you have those two generations, and then all of a sudden you get Generation Z. So that's kind of anybody 23, 24 and below. Now, what are some of the things that Generation Z has gone through in their time on this earth? Kind of big stuff that they went through.
Pandemic.
Okay. COVID.
College exams during the pandemic.
Right. Any, absolutely rocked here in the States, especially in urban areas, absolutely rocked that generation. And they are still recovering. Somebody else. What else is sort of, when you think that generation, what do you think of?
Which generation are we talking about? Gen
Z. This is the youngest folks. Will, you can go to the next slide. I'll run through these quick. So first of all, they were born with social media in their hands. Somebody talked about it, right? They were born with it. They're social media natives. Next slide. The next thing was COVID. Huge impact on Generation Z. Next slide. Here in the States, mass shootings. I mean, the two places you feel like, man, I should be safe, church and school, were now not safe, right? Next slide. Climate change. They believe that, Florida, the state of Florida, is not going to be here in 20 years. That bothers them, and they think about that. And then the last part is, if you go to the next one, is the American dream is dead. So the American dream was graduate high school, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids. For Generation Z, they don't have that anymore. College is too expensive. They can't get a job with the recession to earn a living wage, so they're still with their parents. So then marriage and sort of children and family is like, is gone. So the reason why I do that is to take us through thinking what it's like to be somebody in the younger generation, especially here in the States, from my perspective, and everything that they've gone through. And this is where I want to get into, okay, what does that mean for leadership? And if you go to the next slide, I lay out generationally, this is sort of how different people from different generations look at leadership. So Gen X We're learning to ride a bike. The task is ride a bike. Gen Xers set a clear standard and get out of their way. I don't want any help. I never wanted help. Just tell me what it is and I'll figure out how to get there. Right? So you got the kid pedaling his bike, he's falling, gets up, falls, gets up, but they don't want any help. They want to figure it out on their own. That's Gen X. Millennials, you can set the standard, but they're going to want to kind of do it together and they want to go towards an exciting destination. It's something, for us, it's like Disneyland, Disney World. You think millennials, they want to be at Disney World, exciting stuff, Kardashians, all that. Like, it's got to be exciting. Gen X will try to win just because. I think Damien said, they just work. We just work because I want to work and I want to get promoted and I want to be the best. That's just who we are. Millennials, they got to know why and they got to have a destination. And then Gen Z, you have to, for some of these people coming in the workforce, you have to begin by kind of walking by them side by side, right? And sort of getting them going and helping them before they can pedal on their own. And that's a very different model of leadership. And if you go to the next slide, it explains that just a little bit more. And I use that same spectrum that we saw for Mission Command, right? So my thesis is that emotionally intelligent leaders must increase their focus on building the foundation of individuals, young individuals, to get the most out of them based on who they are. So when they come in, you might have to kind of shepherd them a little more. You might have to put a hand in the small of their back and kind of help them along. Remember, the American dream is dead. They don't have a path. They don't have a goal like some of us had. And part of it is some of you have to create that for them and sort of show them, this is what it's like to show up at work every day. This is what it's like to move forward and have a goal. So I use the word encourage and equip. And we're finding it in I know in my small business, help out at a real estate company and consult at a real estate company, we're spending time and energy encouraging and equipping our employees because otherwise they just wilt. They just quit and they just fall and they just give up. Well, I'm not going to ride the bike. Forget it. Right? So part of this process in Mission Command 2.0 is using that emotional intelligence, identifying who people really are, where they're at, and helping them along the process. You can see the red, you're kind of holding on. In the yellow, they have the training wheels, and then you can get them to the green where now you're holding them accountable and you're able to empower them, give them tasks and all those things. And then my last slide here really just explains, hey, what is emotional intelligence? And emotional intelligence is the ability to acknowledge, identify, and process your own emotions and the emotions of others to make good decisions and get the best results. And the thing I want to focus on here is, one, you got to be able to see yourself. So I use the generations to go, man, look, what's my generation and what are my strengths and weaknesses based on my generation? That's self-awareness and self-management. Now, the social awareness is looking at their generation and being able to understand their strengths and weaknesses and get the most out of them based on who they are. Whether you look at it generationally by age, whether you look at it by gender, whether you look at it by race, each one of those has certain strengths and weaknesses based on, and it comes down to really understanding that person, understanding who they are, more focus on the individual to be able to get the most out of them as a leader and get your organization going in the direction you want it to go. So that's my kind of take on Mission Command, and then the next step of Mission Command 2.0, growing our emotional intelligence as leaders in order to get the most out of the people that work for us. And with that, I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Always very insightful. So like as Eric was saying, any question, we'll start with
Yes, so I would have one if anybody else doesn't have questions.
I can go after you.
Okay. So Eric, I'm curious because when we arrive, when we are with the teams, we have to deliver. So there is some kind of, time is precious. And also teams are very balanced. So in one team we'll have, we might have all the generations, and we have to make that team working and collaborating together. And sometimes there is no luxury to figure it out and work individually with everybody to get them to a place. And I've noticed there is lots of frustration in the places that, younger people indeed needs more support than, like if you get somebody, from there is a difference in generation. So some people, like if I don't want to label people, older but like some people will have that ability, go figure it out, and come back with questions if they really stuck. Other people like to be supported from the beginning, but there's a time pressure to deliver. So how do you have any recipe how to, optimize that process that it works in the diverse and balanced team?
You just described that spectrum really well, right? Some people give them the task they're going to figure out. Other ones, you're going to have to help along a little bit. So your question was with the time crunch, how do you do it? Well, it's hard. It's hard, right? So two thoughts. One, the problem is if we don't do it with the one that's in the red, we'll lose them. And you can either get rid of them and try again with another, but you're going to spend a lot of time hiring, because hiring and interviewing and getting the right person, because we want to hire everybody in the green, right? We want to hire that person with grit that can do it themselves. But the hiring process is very long and expensive. So I can either spend time hiring, or I can program time, which I never had to use before, to develop that person. So when you're looking at the time crunch, you have to carve out a little bit of time for that kind of that ushering and that hand holding. And I think we're going to have to change as organizations and spend time that we've never spent before developing, because some of these people don't have the foundation to even have a conversation. They don't know how to talk. Somebody brought up, right? They only know how to text. They don't know how to interact. The other thing is the importance of onboarding skyrockets. The more you can train that person and spend time with them during their onboarding into the company and teaching them the culture, right? Gavin talked about the culture, indoctrinating them into the culture of the company, the heart of the company. You're going to start to move them along into the amber, maybe even to the green in your onboarding processes. But you really got to spend some time, energy, and money on that onboarding process, so you're not spending it when they're on the project, to your point, under the time crunch.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
Can I have a follow-up question as well?
Go for it, yeah.
Thanks. So, Eric, thanks very much for that answer. So, do you have any, like Susan Whelan, who researched the development of the teams into high performance? I believe that she estimated it takes around 6 months for a team to get there. Do you have any experience if that timeline shifted? So, when the team is new, what's the realistic expectation if we are so different and so many people need that support? Like, what's now in that timeline change for developing that highly performing team?
I don't know I'm not sure if it's changed. What I would say is we have to be deliberate about using team building methods that resonate with them. The number one is social media. And if you watch any of my YouTube videos, I talk about that. I was an Army colonel, and I managed my own Facebook account, and I was connected with all my soldiers, and they were hearing my words constantly, right? And I was always taking pictures with them and tagging their families, and that really lowered the communication barriers and flattened it and made that integration, faster. It's like, oh, we complain about they're on their phone all the time. Well, if they're on their phone all the time, then that's where we need to be as leaders. And the thing is, you can say whatever you want. It's propaganda. You can tell them anything you want on social media, right? Just like they do. So, if you're not in their face with your themes and messages to build your culture using social media, you're missing out on that integration to shorten that time for them to understand the culture and be a part of your team.
Eric, can I just add something here? Just a thought came to me when Joanna was talking there, about about the time crunch and how do you get the teams up running and kind of integrate newer people into the teams and help them develop. But so what we tended to do is, this only works in larger companies, is set up employee resource groups. So we set up a group that basically, so it's outside of their core work, but it's helping them develop in different areas or helping them with mentorship or things like that. So I guess that's just a point that when we talk about how do you do it, yeah, it's probably going to be a bigger challenge in a smaller company, but in larger companies, we have these other ways of developing people without on their job developing them.
That's great. Will, can you go back one slide? So the bicycle slide. I mean, Damien, that's a great example of help holding the bike and helping them, right? A safe place they can go to get the support they need and without taking time away from, your stuff at work. The other interesting trend I'm seeing in the companies we work with is people want to, operators want to delegate the red to HR, right? They want HR to do the hand holding and that stuff. And HR is like, well, that's not my job. So it's falling in between the two. The ops people are like, I'm here to operate and make money. The HR people are like, I just do my HR thing. Nobody wants to do this hard leader development, foundational, development. And if we miss it, those people, that's the thing. They're different from our generation. They will quit. They don't care. They will quit and go back home and live with mom. At least that's how it is here in the States.
Thanks. Then my question, as a background, I'm originally from Finland, and in Finland you can tell anything to any of your colleagues or boss. You can criticize your boss, you can tell improvement suggestions to your colleagues, and that's completely normal. And then for 4 years, I have been working with these big American companies, and it has been very different. So I have a practical situation, and it would be great to have your tips, like how to act in that kind of situation. If you notice you have a colleague, so it's not person under you, but it's a colleague who you notice would need more handholding. And then the American advice I have gotten often is just like, you tell your boss, and after that you shut up. Like, you are not entitled to tell this to anyone or kind of make it a big deal out of it. So what are kind of your tips how to get the right visibility to this issue if you notice your colleague really needs more handholding and it's not noticed enough?
I think in general, we use this word or this phrase called managing up, leading up. Have you heard about that? Have you heard that concept?
Maybe, but not very familiar with it.
Yeah. So leading up, it's funny thinking about the Finnish culture and the fact that you don't have to lead up. You can just tell them what you think, right? That's really interesting. Leading up is figuring out how to add value to your boss to create opportunities for you and your team, right? Adding value to your boss, helping them with things that they think are important, their priorities, to give you the freedom to lead your team, or in this case, to then, you can't go in cold and go, hey man, this guy here needs help, right? It takes a little bit more finesse. It takes a little bit more, we use the word politics, but in sort of a negative connotation, like you're playing politics a little bit. You have to spend some time and energy managing up in order for you to speak freely on that topic. And then the other person, the thing I would say, emotional intelligence wise, is understanding who your boss is, right? What's their personality? Are they a powerful personality? Are they a peaceful, kind of laid back? Or are they, we call them a perfect, right? Super detailed, and figuring out, man, okay, how do I best communicate and connect with my boss based on who they are in order to get that message across in a way that helps them. So that's a tough scenario, Carla, that you brought up. Like, how do I get to tell my boss that they need to be a better leader to this person? But it really does involve, I think, managing up and being value added to them, and then also understanding who they are and trying to communicate with them based on a way that means the most to them as a person.
Yeah, thanks. And then also the situation can be that this person is like in the neighbor organization or under the neighboring boss kind of. So it's not the same boss even, but yeah, same politics, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
Eric, I have a question for you that just spring in my mind. Would you say that there are differences in terms of the size of company, in terms of dealing with this, the way that you, I guess, you lead people, and whether you're dealing with large companies or medium or small companies? Are there kind of nuances?
Yeah, it was an interesting. Somebody kind of brought that same question up for Gavin, and I think in a smaller company, it's more visceral. It's you can just feel it more, right? Like in the real estate company, it's 25 people. If one person is ticked in the office, like, you can feel it. Everybody, the vibe is off. You can sense it. In a big bureaucracy, in a big company, it takes a lot to sort of rock the system. It just sort of flows. So I think a smaller company is a lot more, that the gauge of positive, feelings or culture or whatever can change a lot quicker in a small company. In a big company, the oil tanker is just going slow, and it's very hard to turn. The small company's like a speedboat. You can hit, it's bad, something happens and it can turn quick and for good or bad. So there's some good and bad to both of that. There's some positives to being in a big company, and there's some positives and negatives to being in a small company.
Very good. So I say this is all the time that we have for tonight. It's been amazing. I've learned loads. Gavin perspective on the players that I work with, and then Eric. It's always quite interesting to hear your take and understand how to to navigate with dealing and leading different generations. So thank you very much. It's been really good, and the interaction has been amazing. I'm going to just talk about a few things before we finish.
And as Will is changing the slides, I quickly will ask you, please feel free to sign up and join our newsletter, and you will be notified about any events and we are organizing. We tend to organize monthly meetups, so please keep an eye, and if you would like to hear from us, newsletter is the best way to do so.
Joanna, this is absolutely on the point here. So I was going to talk about a couple of events that we have. So we do have another meetup organized in Galway, and hopefully this will be an in-person meetup. So it's going to be on the 29th of March, and we already have 2 speakers. Bernie Rush, who is a local professional lean consultant. And we also have Chris Sims, who is a best seller in the topics of Agile and Scrum. So it's been quite interesting. Hopefully as exciting, as insightful as this meetup tonight. We also have already a few sponsors as well who will be supporting the event. Blue Drop Medical, Gavin was talking about them. We have a larger event as well coming up in Cork. So this is going to be organized by the Agile in Ireland group. So it's going to be in Park Niquiv. I am not an Irish native speaker, so apologies if my pronunciation is wrong, but it's going to be on the 2nd of October. So it's going to be a much larger event with a lot more speakers, and certainly as insightful even as tonight. So there's going to be more communication on this. And that is it. We're just 8 p.m. It's been amazing. Great crowds, amazing speakers. So thank you very much. And
hey, Will, one more thing. I think you were going to, Eric. Yeah, if you guys, I think Will's going to send out a Google survey. I'd appreciate any feedback or any 5-star reviews on the Google survey that Will sends out. So appreciate everybody's time tonight. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Absolutely, Eric. Yeah, absolutely. It will be a pleasure. So thank you very much again. Thank you to Eric and Gavin and my supporting cast crew, Joanna and Anthony. So and also our 3 sponsors, Porter Sheds, Titan HQ, and also Arrowhead Leadership Consulting. So thank you very much. Have a great evening, and hopefully we'll be seeing you soon.